This episode of the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast was first broadcast on the 25th of December, 2015.
Hello and welcome to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, the bi-weekly show that brings you the best of powerlifting in Canada, discussing trending topics, training advice, coaching philosophies and much more. Our three co-hosts include Ryan Stinn, holder of the heaviest equipped squat and total in Canadian Powerlifting Union history, boasting a 4th place finish at Worlds and 1st place finish at North Americans. He is also the owner of Unparalleled Performance Training Centre in Moose Jaw, as well as co-owner of Inner Strength Products. Steve Cassioli, IPF World Record holder and bronze medalist at the 2015 IPF Classic World Championships, the 3rd strongest powerlifting in the history of Canada based on Wilks, and owner of Cassioli Strength and Conditioning. And lastly, Avi Silverberg, world team coach and world bench press medalist, owner of Pursuit of Strength, an online powerlifting coaching hub served to enhance athletic performance through programming and educational seminars. Today's episode starts right now.
Hello and welcome to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast. You are joining us on episode 6, and we have some extremely good news. I know that last time we were a little bit worried when we recorded the episode because we had filmed and recorded all of this content at the Commonwealth Powerlifting Championships, and we didn't know if the content actually was recorded. And we just found out in the last week or so that it was. We got the content, and now we are going to be able to release that content over the next 2 or 3 episodes. So part of what you're going to hear today is some of that recording from the Commonwealth Powerlifting Championships. In just a second, we will detail exactly what you'll hear today. But we wanted to start this episode just talking about something that's happened quite recently. Today, actually, the day of when we're recording this intro, is another positive drug test in the CPU, a lifter from Ontario. And I just want to turn it over to Ryan here to talk a little bit about drug testing.
Yeah, I think it's very timely. I mean, we talked to Mark Giffen last time about drug testing quite a bit, and just about how much CSIS has taken on this program. And I think it really kind of proves that they really know what they're doing, right? They're not testing just the winners at nationals anymore. They're not testing the winners at local contests. They are looking at variances, and the last little while here, there's been a couple of OMTs that came back positive, and other ones that have come back clean as well. But they obviously know what they're doing. They're not just randomly picking people to test. The program is working, and I think it's working well. And I think it's maybe it's time that some people out there just if you're going to do stuff, go lift somewhere else.
I think that's the bottom line. I completely agree with you, Ryan. It absolutely blows my mind that we still have people in the Canadian Powerlifting Union who are trying to cheat the system, and it's sad. It's kind of bittersweet because if you are using, we're going to get you. I mean, it's just as simple as that. It's just a matter of time. CSIS is doing a fantastic job. I actually have a statement from Chris Robb, who is the chair of the Anti-Doping Committee of the Canadian Powerlifting Union. We reached out to him and asked him to provide a statement for us, and I will read it now for you. He says, in light of the most recent anti-doping infraction and with 2016 competitions upon us, the CPU Anti-Doping Committee would like to reiterate the CPU's policy and stance of zero tolerance for the use of performance-enhancing substances. 2015 was a great year of expansion of the anti-doping program, and in 2016, the CPU and Anti-Doping Committee will continue the push towards clean sport. In the coming year, there will be yet more significant increases in volumes of tests, both in and out of competition. Also, the blood collection portion of the testing program will be increasing noticeably. As stated in the CPU Constitution, the aim of the CPU anti-doping policy is to eradicate the use of performance performance-enhancing substances within the CPU and to bolster the rights of the athletes/members who choose to enjoy the sport of powerlifting in Canada without these substances. We on the committee, and the CPU executive remain more committed than ever to this goal. Good luck to all in training and upcoming contests, and best of the season to all. And that kind of brings us over to Steve. Steve, you are part of the Whereabouts program in Canada. You're part of that group who needs to notify the CPU and the World Anti-Doping Agency anywhere you go. Anywhere you go, if you travel, if you are leaving the city, the province, the country, if you have any sort of variances in your day-to-day routines that are abnormal, you have to actually notify where you're going so that at any time the CPU can show up on the CSIS can show up on your doorstep and drug test you. And you were actually out of meat tested recently. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so pretty much, part of this Whereabouts program, I have to let them know an hour time slot where they can test me 100%, my activities, so when I go to the gym, and then like an overnight accommodation. I have to give them this information quarterly, so every 3 months I got to update it. And as a matter of fact, I think when I was first on it, like I was, to be honest with you, I wasn't updating it all the time. And the one time I was actually got an email back because they actually showed up at my door. Like I put a time slot in like 7 to 8. They showed up. I think I might have left a little bit early before 8 o'clock. They showed up. I wasn't there. So I actually have a strike under my belt. And a lot of people might not know that. So they're super, super strict about this. And the one time they showed up, it was I think 8, 9 o'clock, about dinner time, just before bed. Get a knock on the door. 2 people show up. They test you right there. It's like fill out the paperwork. Someone follows me into the washroom. Do your thing, and again, seal it up and send it away. And it's like they're very serious about this. It's not something to take easy, right? If you don't know the prohibited list of like substances you cannot take, I mean, there's tons of stuff online. You search it up, and the whole list is there, like right there for you.
I think one thing to really mention though is that you don't have to be on that Whereabouts to be OMT'd. I mean, they have every address of every CPU member, and they can show up at anyone's house and OMT you. It's just the Whereabouts people that are required to give that kind of day-to-day feedback on where they will be, because they're most likely to be OMT'd, I think. But they can OMT anyone in the CPU.
So it's that time. We want to roll into this week's recording. We have some fantastic content, like I said, that we filmed at the Commonwealth Powerlifting Championships. We're going to be releasing it slowly over the next few weeks. This week, we sat down with the team coaches for the Commonwealth Powerlifting Championships, Mark Morris, Ashley Bird, Carla Ramsey. We also had Ryan in the chair, and Steve unfortunately wasn't able to join us for the recording, but I'm going to turn over to Ryan here to just talk about a little bit about what we went over.
Oh, it was a really good conversation. It was the end of day 4 or day 3 of lifting, so everyone's getting pretty tired at that point. A couple people may have had a drink or two before we sat down, but it was a great discussion about coaching at that level of an event, how coaching in the CPU has kind of evolved at this kind of event, and I hope it shows people how tough of a job it really is to come to these events and coach. I think you had 110 athletes at Commonwealths over the course of 5 days or so. It was a long week for U4, but it was it turned into a great conversation.
So without further ado, let's roll.
So sitting in front of us here, we have all of the Team Canada coaches for the Commonwealth Powerlifting Championships here in Richmond, BC. So we got Mark Morris, Carla Ramsey, Ashley Bird, myself, Avi Silverberg, and we have Ryan Stinn over here. I mean, I guess he should probably be on the podcast.
Sometimes.
And he's actually honestly lifting tomorrow, right?
That's right.
Okay, but the one thing we all share in common now is that we all have coached on international teams, either at Worlds or at some IPF level event. So I'm going to turn over to Mark here because Mark is a lifter from Saskatchewan.
Yep, thanks for having us on.
Mark, how much have you had to drink?
What's that?
How much have you had to drink?
1 beer.
Okay. You sound kind of drunk.
How much have you had to sleep?
You're just tired. It's the tired thing. Oh, I see. Yeah.
We've been extreme coaching all week, and it's taken
one day left. One day left.
Now, talk to us about extreme coaching. How many athletes did we go through in the last, just let's say, 2 days?
I think the best indication of how many athletes we went through is because I have no idea how many athletes we've coached in the last few days. I do know there's 2 18-hour days in a row, which is pretty interesting, and things just start warping together. But no idea.
I think on day one or on one of the days we had 30 athletes. I think yesterday we had 29. Today we had somewhere close to that as well. So, and then when you're running dual platforms, when you're running multiple flights, it can kind of blur together a little bit.
It's just
18-hour days, like you said.
Absolutely, and it adds like another layer of complexity to it with the dual platforms and the delays and all that fun stuff. Things are getting changed on you last minute, so. It's been extreme coaching has been extreme coaching.
Now everyone's wondering here, Mark. Everybody's wondering here, not just us here sitting in front of the mics here, but everybody part of Team Canada is wondering, how do you extreme coach and wake up the next day looking so damn fresh? I don't understand it. No, your beard is always on point. Your hair, your eyes never look tired. I don't understand. It's like your eyes are just. It's like you've had 10 hours of sleep, man. Like, how is that?
I got to be completely honest. I'm actually a hologram.
Do you use cucumbers, like cold press on the eyes?
A cucumber hologram.
So let me turn it over here to Ashley and Carla here. So Carla joined myself and Ryan on the classic world team in Finland.
Extreme Coaching Finland edition.
And exactly. And so this is now Carla's second time coaching internationally, and now taking on a little bit more responsibility on this team in terms of attempt selection and taking on her own athletes. So tell us a little bit about kind of this experience and how it's been going so far.
This experience versus the Finland experience?
No, the Commonwealth.
Okay.
You can compare it with Finland if you want.
Well, the extreme coaching edition here has been. I thought it was like my own personal Vietnam in Finland, but I was incorrect. We did 49 athletes in 9 days in Finland. Here we've done, when it's all said and done, it's going to be 110 athletes over 5 days. So it's pretty intense. Most people actually have no idea what goes into coaching that many athletes, right? You're having people come in that you've never met before. You have no idea of what their level of conditioning, what their technique is like, what their personalities are like, and you have to try and read them on a few minutes, right? To be able to assess what their ability is, how you're going to be able to coach them, and you have to be able to make decisions like that. So they're not always necessarily, hindsight's always 20/20. You make decisions on the fly that can turn out great, and then there's going to be decisions that you look back and reflect upon and think, okay, maybe I could have done that differently. But you have split decisions to make decisions. You don't have a lot of time to prepare. So,
and we obviously have a process for intaking athletes on these international teams. We try to gather a lot of information, and we try to follow up and continuously follow up and understand the athlete's needs on competition day before the competition. But you can see somebody on paper, and you can see somebody kind of remotely if you're watching a video of them or whatever, but it's completely different when they're now in competition. There's a little bit of pressure, and you're trying to assess exactly what they need in this given moment and how they compete, and then just providing the support so that they can build to a successful meet. But yeah, it adds another level of complexity when we have so many lifters competing. It's a good problem to have. I'm not complaining. I think it's awesome that we're sending full teams now to these meets.
I agree 100%.
And
but it does. It's such a stress on the coaching team. Like, I know you and I sat down and talked about realistically what is the value of a coach, and I think in Finland you were paid $1,000 for 9 days of coaching.
A little bit more.
A little more?
Yeah,
okay.
1,500.
So, but for 9 days of competition, that means you're staying in Europe for 9 days in a hotel. It probably costs you €100 a night, right? Like, it doesn't even cover your hotel costs.
Yeah.
And then you're expected to work 12 or 15 hour days coaching and trying to do a good job, right? It's not only physical investment, it's emotional investment, and it's exhausting, and it's something that I've talked to people in the CPU about our coaching, and and the monetary needs of it. And I just remember the best idea I ever had. It was an awesome idea, and I remember I'm gonna record it right now on the podcast so that we have when we send a world team, we send someone to a world team. Everyone pays $150 to be on the world team, right? Which is actually, depending on exchange, is a little bit higher than the cost of the world team. And my thought was to take all the extra money
Coaching fee
and put it towards coaches, so that if there is perhaps $1,000 or $1,500 put aside for coaching, then if you have 100 athletes and there's a $10 surplus per, that's suddenly not $1,000 for coaching, right? So I had thought of this the other day and meant to text my brother-in-law, because we're both in the coaching committee, but now I've remembered it again, and I've recorded it so I won't forget it.
Mark and I had that exact conversation today. Mark,
Yeah, it makes complete sense,
Yeah.
especially over like when we're talking about the effort you put into coaching would be the exact amount of lifters you have, right? So it's kind of
Absolutely.
proportional to that too. The amount of work you're going to have to put into it, how late you're going to have to stay. The other thing I have to ask is, this is an official agenda item on the. Is this count? It might
this
count.
counts, yeah, this
It might be on the
counts.
agenda now for
the AGM.
Yeah,
That's
the
right.
AGM.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly don't do it for the monetary benefits. I mean, it's erroneous, right?
It's
I mean,
for love of the sport,
It's totally
for sure.
erroneous, and it's essentially, giving back and providing some expertise in something that you may have a specialty in, right? Because you've been to lots of meets and you've coached a lot of athletes and you've been to international meets yourself, and you might know the rules a little bit better and things like that. And one of the problems that we have, and it's a good problem, is that we're sending more and more athletes, almost exponential, on each international team. We had a record number of athletes going to Finland, on 49 athletes, and then a few months later for North Americans, we had sent about 60 something, and then now here at Commonwealth we have 110. So if we continue this trend, we are going to have to staff these meets, these big competitions, with more coaches. Now, not to say that we're not doing a great job, it's just that we're all kind of red
You're a
eyes,
limited
glazed
resource. You're a
over,
limited resource.
and when you're 4 or 5 days in, you've been working 15, 16 hours, and you need to make a split-second decision. When you need to be on the ball, it's those sorts of factors from a coaching standpoint. If you're tired, is what's going to perhaps make a you're going to make a bad decision or a slip up, right? But Ashley, I'm going to turn it over to you, because you actually joined this world team as an intern coach, is the official title.
The official intern.
Yeah, and so just kind of getting your feet wet here for international competition, and I believe it's your first international competition, whether as a coach or an athlete. So seeing it now, and having maybe a little bit of an idea of what it might be like, was there a
How
big
much
learning
regret do
curve,
you
or
have?
what did you?
I will never see you guys again.
Now that
This is
you're,
it. That's
I'm
it.
just
Screw you guys.
so now that you go before you came on the team, so a few days ago before the meet started, and now what kind of things can you say after now seeing it and being in it, living in it, would you say is kind of a big eye opener?
Well, I think coming into this, I sort of knew what to expect. I mean, to a certain extent, because Carla is my business partner, and I learn a lot from her on a daily basis, because she's a lot more experienced than I am. She's been doing this for a lot longer than I have, so I feed off of her as much as I can and learn from her as much as I can. And she kind of explained what her role was in Finland, and the kind of hours you guys were putting in and the work you guys were putting into it, and kind of what to expect from that standpoint. So I kind of knew a little bit what I was getting into. So I was prepared for that. But what I wasn't prepared for was, I guess, the amount of information overload. It's a lot of learning in a very short amount of time, and I'm trying to grasp as much of it as possible, which I think I'm doing an okay job of. But the other thing too is, like, you want to make sure that you're not going to affect the athlete negatively or the team negatively, and you want to make sure that you're not forgetting essential information that you need, especially in the moment. And it can be as simple as, making sure you don't misload the bar.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're converting pounds to kilos properly and things like that. And doing it really quickly because there's a ton of athletes. So that's the stuff that I'm not used to. But it's been a really good experience for me because I think that I've learned more than the average coach would in a really short period of time. So I can take that into my coaching experience.
And this is exactly what I think I told you before, and I told Carla in Finland, is that if you're a powerlifting coach and you have a couple athletes and you're prepping them for a competition, a local meet, you'll run your athletes through that meet, your 1 or 2 athletes, and that's your experience as a coach. Now, when you come to an international meet, you have 5 or 6 days of lifting, 3 or 4 sessions a day, and each session is considered a new meet. So you're literally getting, over the course of 5 days, maybe 15 to 20 meets, so to speak. And how often are you going to, or how long will it take to accumulate 15 to 20 meets under your belt as a coach? It's going to take years and years. And so, because you might only coach at 2 or 3 competitions a year. So you're literally getting years of experience in a really condensed amount of time. And not only that, you're just handling more athletes and varied athletes, ones who are really, really experienced, who've competed at multiple world championships all the way, and world champions all the way down to somebody who's just, competing for the first time at an international meet. Sure. So you mentioned being able to process information and being able to process information quickly. I'm going to turn over to Mark here because the average onlooker who's sitting in the stands doesn't know what's happening backstage, doesn't know what's happening on the score sheet maybe. And Ashley talked about managing information. I mean, what kind of information is there to know about? Because people in the stands will just be like, well, aren't they just lifting? Aren't they just selecting their weights? And aren't they just going out there and just lifting weights? Why is it so complicated?
There's so much information going on. And even today we had coaching decisions that had elements of not only purely mathematical numbers, but psychology and, a little bit of strategy and a bunch of stuff going on at once and things where we had to pull information quickly from a bunch of different locations and come up with a decision that was not only best for our lifter, but best for the team and would set everyone up for success. So, I mean, you got to really be thinking, there's a lot of elements of it that you're playing your cards and what you have to do, but at the end of the game, really thinking, what is this other team going to do and what's best for your lifter at the same point. And that's what we had with Leon today was pulling elements of what is the English team going to do and what is that going to force them to do and what are we capable of and thinking that. So there's elements of...
And then running through possible 3, 4, 5, scenarios just really, really quickly and doing the math.
Exactly. And it worked out, which was great. So that was super, super cool. And I mean, other reasons too, things like what's on the line, what's on the stake, what is the athlete capable of, what's going to make them happy, what's going to make them rise to the occasion, kind of thing. What is on the line here? What are they going to be able to do? What's going to make them happy? What are they capable of? That kind of stuff. We've had scenarios with that Absolutely. Today. Maybe there's not much on the line, but this is going to be something that's going to finish off their day on the right notes and keep them coming back to the sport, right? Those things are super, super important.
Absolutely. That's such a great perspective there.
I think that's the most stressful part of the job is that you have, as a coach, coming into this, you have athletes from all different abilities and levels you have someone coming in that is a high caliber athlete that has the possibility of making a world record. And based on a decision you make, they could make it or break it, right? And you have to be able to know what's the right choice to make, whether it be for the athlete to succeed or for the team to succeed. Those are components that the average coach at a daily meet or whatever, or just a local meet has no concept of. And I had no concept of.
Or not even concept, but consideration. And I think we talked about this with Casey and Sarah when they were in the chair, is that, when you're in an international meet, there's more than just you. You're now on a team, okay? And you have way more competition in your class. So jostling for position now becomes a key part of the day.
Very strategic.
Right? And then accumulating team points and accumulating team medals And it's kind of the decisions are a little bit bigger than yourself, and that's one of the things that we try to teach and learn, teach and get the athletes learning about, is that when you're on these teams, you have to be thinking more globally.
It's so hard. It's coaching in general at a local meet can be difficult, but as soon as you're starting to watch competition, and especially third attempt deadlifts, like with Kelly in Finland, it was just back and forth, and you're constantly doing not complex math in your head, but you're constantly doing simple math in your head.
But you're exhausted. So
and
that's
you're
simple
exhausted.
math.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And you're second guessing yourself and triple guessing, continuously. But what I think is one thing that you really get from coaching at this level, and it's like seeing, like you said, like seeing 20 meets, is you really learn to see failure points on lifters.
That's
and you really learn
Absolutely.
to see
recognizing those cues.
Yeah, and you learn to say you have 2.5 kilos more than that.
Yeah.
You don't have 5 more.
Yesterday.
It's something that you get from years of watching people train, and most good coaches probably aren't coaching their athletes to fail in their gym all the time, right? But to be able to see that, to be able to see the failure, and to even notice the little things, right? Whether it's a weight shift forward, every lift you see is a learning experience, right? Mm-hmm. And whether it's 10,000 hours or 10,000 reps you see, it's everything you see, you learn, right? You process, and this is a condensed 10,000 hours of learning.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And you know what? I mean, I can just give you a prime example of that, because when we get staffed on these teams on occasion, and you're working with very similar athletes, if they make consecutive teams like this, is you get to know the athlete as well, and you get to learn their individual cues. And prime example this week was Steve Cassioli, who went out and broke the world record for squat. And I said, you got 3 more kilos in the tank, 3 more kilos. Right. And it's like, listen, we're gonna take a shot at something that I know you can do 100% of the time. I said, I know you had 40, and he had 247.5 in his mind, but it's like, we're not going to go there, because it's a gamble. I've been saying this all week, is that, listen, here's why I know you can be 100% of the time, and we can take a shot at 100% today. And why wouldn't you take a shot at 100% when you're in your head and you're fixed to your plan or whatever, or they have a PR in their head? Is a gamble on that day, is a 50% shot or a 25% shot, right?
Another example of that was actually with Rhea's lifting, who I see lift all the time, right? But we don't go to failure. And she did her second bench at 116 kilos. And we're standing there and we said 118, and you said 1.5 more. And so the question was 2 kilos or 1.5 kilos, right? And I said, yeah, let's do 1.5. So we went 117.5. And I think that was probably, I don't know if she would have got 118.
Yeah.
117.5 was the call, right?
Yeah. And so when you go on for records, you do have that leeway of 0.5, which is amazing, right? And you can add that into it as well. And I just want to go back with what, previously what you were saying in terms of, back in Finland, how, you're doing the math and you're running through the possible scenarios, and you're kind of doubting yourself, and you're going through, all the possible scenarios. Because Carla and I were getting into a conversation yesterday about how she literally was sitting there for 5 minutes and just crunching all the stuff that goes into a third attempt deadlift, and then playing out the numbers and everything like that. And it's the first time you're doing that, right? That was the first time that you actually had to be in a situation on a big platform for a really high priority lifter, and you're just there's self-doubt.
If I calculate this wrong, he's either gonna get silver or he's gonna lose it, and right. So it's like, and at this time I've had 3 hours of sleep every night for the last 3 nights, so my mind's not working optimally, and I was punching in numbers, and each time I'm getting a different number, and I'm like, crap, like this is wrong. Like, okay, what am I gonna do? I know I can't go running to somebody else to ask, hey, what can I do? Because every other coach is just as busy trying to make the same kind of decisions, right? So it's like, okay, I have to be right about this. When I submit this number, I have to be right?
Now, just gonna turn the spotlight on the coaches, because we're all coaches here, right? We wouldn't expect athletes every day in and day out, to be perfect, right? We wouldn't expect that of our athletes. And I was saying this, to the coaches beforehand, and I always tell, lifters and coaches, getting involved, is that you're going to make mistakes. Like, you are going to make mistakes. I can think of so many prime examples over the years. I can think back to multiple teams and multiple athletes. I mean, it's getting less and less frequent where, hopefully the percentage of times where you're making the wrong decision is going down. But I can think of many examples where, you do make a bad call and you can't beat yourself up about it. I can think of situations where, it was for medal and the athlete, you made the wrong decision, right? Or you second guess yourself and you make the wrong decision. It's learning. You learn in those situations,
and you learn to trust yourself, right? I think
That's right.
I think if there's any point, and an example yesterday was I was coaching Ray, and I happened to be in the back room, and I was helping with other 72 kilo lifters, and Bianca Liberatore was lifting, and it was her first international competition, and I watched her squat warm ups, and after her last warm up, I said, "Are you confident at 10 kilo jump on that?" And if I ask a lifter that means I'm not confident on your 10 kilo jump on that. And she said, "I'm confident on it." Abby came over a few minutes later, and I said, "I would drop her opener, Abby." And I'm not a coach here, so I don't have a say in it. But if I have a doubt in my mind, I will change it. Like I don't. If I have a doubt as a coach, I don't take a chance. I coached single-handedly at Master Worlds in 2011 in Ontario, and I think my worst day was about 11 or 12 lifters by myself. That might have been one session. Anyway, and I think I had 2 people bomb on me, and that's, as a coach, you feel like you failed, right?
For days.
For days, yeah.
For days, and it just you reflect on it, and you just and I can turn it over to Mark and Ashley and Carla here. It's like, you feel you're tired because, yes, you're running on a little sleep, but you're tired because you're up and down with the emotions of the lifters. And in order for you to get the lifters going, you got to kind of get going a little bit. And I love Mark for this because, we're all tired and, we're all kind of, down and whatever. But when you get in front of an athlete and you're in the moment or whatever, you're always, I'm looking at Mark now,
you have to exude confidence because they are going to see that. And if they read your body language and you are not ready to go, they're not going to be ready to go. And it's very, very important.
And especially when it's late at night and the athletes are going and they've squatted and bench and going to the deadlifts, a lot of athletes start to come down then, right? So I always say, okay, get some sugar and get some, caffeine and start drinking water and get yourself up and rise to the occasion, all this stuff.
Absolutely. And you have to
but you as the coach as well have to do that.
Absolutely. And you have to have, you think of it in your head. You think of it's your 14th hour of coaching. You're coming down, but you got to look over and think, this person has spent all this money in the last 3 months of their life coaching for this event. It's time for me to turn it up because they deserve that. And that's just something you have to do as a coach. So I honestly don't think you have any other option but to give them your best, and hopefully that, influences them to do their best.
And the other thing is as coaches, sometimes we forget we're the leaders of the team. And, if we're there, and we're saying, we're complaining or we're, saying negative things or, oh, I'm tired, I'm sore, whatever, that's going to really impact the athlete as well. It becomes infectious in a way. So I'll have athletes asking me, I don't know if they're fishing, whatever, but they say, oh, you must be tired. And I never, ever say I'm tired. I'm always just like, I'm hitting my groove, guys. Like, I'm feeling fantastic.
Catching my 10th win now.
Even though I'm tired as hell, but I'm never telling them that. Ever.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you do have to act. You don't have to act. You are a Jedi in terms of your zero feelings, and you just have to keep. No, seriously, I'm being serious.
That's a Vulcan, I think.
Yeah.
Actually.
What's that?
I think that's a Vulcan. I think Jedis have feelings.
Well, you don't. There's no emotion.
There's the point of a Jedi is they have a lot of feelings.
Maybe, yeah.
They feel everything.
You're not nerdy enough.
None of us know Star Wars metaphors here. Let's go back to what Mark was saying here.
Zero emotions. You just are Jedi-like, I think. Anyways, okay. You're right. All right. Whatever. Anyways, you have to exude confidence.
Jedi,
and thank you.
You certainly do. Ashley, go ahead.
I think the other thing too is like when you were talking about, we wouldn't expect the athletes to never make a mistake. So obviously, you know, we can't be hard on ourselves if we make a mistake and things like that. But I think there's a bit of a difference because the athlete has one job, and that's to kind of make sure that they lift and they do their job, and that's it. And they focus on their game plan. But when it comes to coaching, you know, if you do make a mistake, you can't go sit in the corner afterwards. You have to kind of bring yourself back up, and you can't take your time to be like, oh, I hate myself. You kind of just have to forget about it and move on, because now you have 10 more athletes to take care of. So you don't really have any time, and you can't really show anybody that you're disappointed or anything like that. You know, you really have to battle through all of that. And like you said, like, you kind of have to be emotionless in a way, because you can't work on that.
Like a Vulcan.
Exactly, not a Jedi.
I'm so impressed that you actually have kind of come to that understanding, because it's something, it's just so true. It's just so true. I mean, I can remember just so many examples. I'll just give an example that everybody knows about, because it's quite, you know, it's quite universal in the CPU, is that Josh Hancock in Worlds this past year in Finland, he bombed, right? And there was lots of factors. There was a multitude of factors that led to that happening. Not any one thing, but at the end of the day, you're the coach, right? And a lot of these decisions can then be turned back. I mean, turn back on the coach. And I was devastated for days. I mean, like, you can't let that show. You can't let that show, because you still have athletes in that session and athletes in the next session. But you feel that in your gut, and you feel it for days. And it's so gut wrenching to be working with athletes, to be working with people who have so much time invested and so much time, training, spending money, going overseas, and for that to happen, it is just you're totally with that athlete with the ups and downs, right?
Absolutely.
And that's with athletes. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's with athletes that you really don't even know, right? Like, once you get invested into an athlete, like someone you really like. I mean, I coach my wife, right? And it is hard. I mean, it's exhausting. I've cut weight with her before. I've coached, like, I coach her all the time, and it's hard. If she has a bad day, I have a bad day, right? And it's hard for me to turn my emotions off when you're that connected to someone. So lots of times it helps to have a coach who isn't as close, right? Someone, and it comes down to the same way that having cheerleaders coaching you is never a good thing, right?
And it's funny because it's something I didn't fully comprehend at Worlds, because I know how upset Abby was when I happened to be there when that happened with Josh, and I know it affected him like gravely, and I didn't fully understand it, because I thought, okay, like, yeah, like, there was a number of things that happened. It wasn't just your choice or whatever, until coming here to Commonwealth, where I had more responsibility, where more of the decisions were left on my shoulders with athletes. And then a couple of decisions I made in a quick split second, that afterwards I was like, oh, that was a bad call. I made a bad call. Then I felt it. I was like, man, a decision I made is now affecting the performance of my athlete. And it's not someone that I actually knew, wasn't a client of mine for a long term. It was just someone I met for this situation for the Commonwealth Games. But I think people who choose a role as being a coach, it's a sport they're passionate about, and they genuinely want to see the people they're trying to help succeed. And if you know a decision you've made has hampered, like, them reaching optimal success, it does sit with you, right? And I get that now. I didn't understand it at first when Abby said, no, man. Like, I was like, no, you, like, you did the best you could. I understood it now. And having more of that responsibility sitting on my shoulders, that decisions I made could affect an athlete, I can understand that.
Yeah. And not even in that coaching situation, like, yesterday we had an athlete not make weight. We actually had two athletes not make weight.
Yeah.
And one of them was Russ Agnew from Saskatchewan, right? And I've known Russ for a few years. He's been lifting for a number of years now. And, I saw him an hour before he had to finish weigh-ins, and he said he was a kilo over. And, he was sweating, and I gave a little bit of advice, and I think Ashley stayed with him. But, I said, he's going to sauna, and I said, spit in sauna, and I really thought he'd be fine. An hour, a kilo is not that much for a big person to lose, right? And he seemed to be sweating quite profusely just standing there. But then he didn't make weight, and I felt horrible, right? Like, maybe I should have gone with him to the sauna. Like, how could I have helped him more? How could I have? And that's, it's tough. And anytime you're coaching and helping someone, if you become invested, right? Whether you've known them for 10 minutes or because they're relying on you and you're kind of relying on them, right? You make a call and then you expect them to do their job, right? Their job is to lift the weight. Your job is to make the best call for them. So it's a real relationship, and it's tough.
As soon as you start working with athletes, doesn't matter if you've known them for a long time or if they're personal athletes or whatever, right? You enter into that coaching relationship, and it becomes very personal very quickly, because you understand the stakes. You understand that they're at a big meet, and you've been there, maybe not at a big meet, but you've competed before, so you know the emotions, and you know what's going on in their heads, and you can rehearse those same emotions right along with them. And as a coach, you believe to have experience and expertise in helping that athlete get to the optimal success. And if you fall short of that, it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to, before we completely wrap up, I want to switch gears, because I think something that at this championship for sure was like very cemented for me. The growth in the CPU over the last little bit has been like primarily females. At least our ratio percentage has been completely different, and I think it's shifted quite a bit. Hold that. Okay, well, say what you want. Okay, but I don't know if that's factual. Is it factual?
Actually, we did the
numbers
before Ray's podcast. We actually ran, and not like a nationwide, but we ran the numbers on nationals, and the ratio between male and female between, I think, 2003, which was Ray's first nationals, and 2015, the ratio male female was the same.
Crazy.
Or like very similar. Very similar. Yeah.
And with that being said,
But totally, I mean, it and I think training and competing, there's a ton more.
Absolutely. And I think we were talking about this today in terms of what drew us to the sport of powerlifting is that we got to lift weights, we got to be aggressive, and we got to, slap each other and all of these things. No, seriously, we got to slap each other and we got to be manly and all that stuff. And that's what drew it to us originally. But what we're seeing, and this is probably like my relationship with my fiance Amy and lifting with her and learning so much from her, is that this is like, it's a technique driven sport, and there's a lot of you can't be as fired up and miss lifts, and we see that all the time where I've learned a lot from that side of things, where a lot of the coaching that we're doing needs a lot more nurturing and a lot more logical things, and it's not just let's get really fired up and let's get crazy and let's miss lifts kind of thing. So it's very important. So I guess where I'm getting at is it's very important for us to have people, females, in these roles, coaching and taking on responsibility. I'm so pumped that that's happening, because this is something we desperately need in the sport, at all levels, athletes, coaches, volunteers. It's just a balance that needs to happen, and I think it is beginning to happen. So just something that I do feel at all levels, not even just the lifting and the coaching. It's something that needs to happen. Because we saw it the other day. We see it like it's something where the people are slapping each other around, missing lifts.
Yeah, I mean, well, first, I don't think it necessarily takes a woman to do the nurturing.
No, absolutely.
Right?
Abby's very nurturing.
Abby's pretty good at that.
But I do agree in the sense that this is a sport. Okay, it's not a backyard, bro fest where, dudes with beards and, dudes with beards.
Beard to beard, I agree with you.
You know what I mean?
Now.
Who are just slapping each other and doing
As three guys with beards here.
and just lifting weight and
That's the biggest thing I've learned from Amy, honestly, 100%, is that before we would slap each other around, and it's not just that like it got awkward because Amy came into the picture, but like she just more or less, she's like, you don't need to do that. You miss lifts when you get too fired up and technique fails, and like just outside of just being less of an idiot, because it does start to look stupid at some point. Yeah. Maybe we got older and it did get stupid, but it's one of those things where it just can't happen.
And I think somebody who doesn't know, the stuff that we do as coaches would assume that, a coach is will slap you around,
Rah,
and
rah,
get you fired up and whatever. And that's like 1/16 of what we do in terms of motivation, right? And the other parts are understanding the cues that are involved with the sport and understanding the technical principles and ensuring that you have a broad knowledge set of those things so that when an athlete comes into your environment who you might not have worked with before, you can select those cues and those technical pieces that fits that athlete. And then in combination with the motivation and what's happening in the field and the knowledge of the sport and the rules, you can get them and set them up for success. But absolutely, it's not just about screaming and yelling at a person.
There is a time and a place, and I think there's some elements of that are still good. But generally, the people that are doing those things are making the lifts that they need to lift. And it's one of those things where it's a trend that I like to continue to see develop. And this is somewhat hypocritical because it's elements that I enjoy, and maybe it's just one of those things that
Mark likes to slap other men.
Yeah, no, I do. I do. 100%.
And you see it, and it's very common, right? And I think getting all fired up is good and all, but and not to throw anyone under the bus. Adrian Locke today, right? Good lifter from Alberta, I think. He fires the top of his squat, right? Just so fired up, he hammers the top of his squat, and the bar comes off his back.
Yep.
And he actually missed his third lift because of it, right?
And props to Adrian, though, because I've seen this guy come into the sport as a junior and now as an open, and he has improved quite technically.
Absolutely. But
I understand.
He's
fired up, and we talked about that, previously with I think Casey and Sarah. Now, I'm just going to ask, I can't remember who it was, Carla or Ashley, but there was an athlete here, female athlete actually, who wanted to get fired up quite a bit and get slapped around a bit, and because that's what it took for her to get in the zone. And everybody has different levels of, I'm going to call it arousal, in terms of like that optimal peak of I'm fired up to get on the platform, or I'm in the zone, right? That optimal level where they feel like they're ready to exert a big force of energy, right?
I don't get fired up really for anything at all. So while I can see the other side of that, it's difficult for me to understand it. Mm-hmm. So obviously difficult for me to get into the role of assisting with that as well. But obviously, you have to go outside your comfort zone when it comes to things like this. So I did. And it was actually rewarding for me because I did actually feel like I helped her. I did, because she thanked me for slapping her in the face. But
it's a slippery slope, I think.
Again.
I think it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
You walk around slapping people.
Right.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And and I thought maybe it would feel good to be asked to slap someone in the face, but it was scary. But no, it was. But I understood what it did for her. And just to actually add on what Mark was saying, and this could be a naive comment coming from me because I am a baby in this sport, so you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me from my observations is that the technical aspects of this sport are becoming more prominent now. And I think that people are working on technique and working on, like programming and things like that.
Yeah, I think generally we're all becoming a little bit more intelligent around things.
Yeah.
So like technique would definitely come into that. And especially, I wouldn't say, I'm not positive because we're going to do ratios again. I bet you more people are pulling sumo than ever. I'm assuming so. I would think so.
I would think so.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a lift where if you get fired up, you're going to get out of position and you're not going to make it. It's just, I've been there a million times where that's happened. I mean, you got to keep the bar close to you. And as soon as you get fired up and it comes, even drifts half centimeter in front of you, you're not going to pull it. So things like that, that's like the biggest thing. And deadlift's notoriously the lift where people are going to get the most fired up.
Listen, it's a sport, right? And if you want to lift heavy and go crazy in a gym and just lift weights and whatever, like in brute strength and muscle it up, great. Like that's there's a place for that. But if you want to get better at powerlifting, which are sports skills, you got to get better at those skills. You got to look at the technique. You got to look at how your body's built, and you got to maximize those leverages and within the rules of the sport. And you're not going to get better. You're not going to be able to make a team or get better if you're not thinking about those things. Absolutely.
And I mean, I wouldn't say that there's always been technicians, right? There's always been people who have been known for good technique, and there's people who are known for bad technique, right? Just pure brute
Who are
strength.
still strong.
Absolutely, and at the top of the game, right? You see it. You still see it at Worlds where you're like, that guy is an ugly squatter, but he squats like a ton, right? Yeah. And
Absolutely, but like generally that will be,
and the information availability is becoming so much better
sure.
now.
Right.
That there's so much good information out there that people are finding it and accessing it and implementing it.
definitely. I guess 90% of people should not model themselves after that person, right? The person that's going to take away from that, the just brute strength, right?
And I think most people can look at it, and I think most people can look at it and say,
And identify it.
yeah, that's not good technique, right?
For sure.
But it works for them, right?
Yeah.
And lots of people look at someone like Lane Norton and say, he's not a good squatter. He's a pretty, if you look at it, he's very bent over.
Yeah.
He's very back-driven squatting, but, he's...
At the end of the day, it's a number, right? Yeah.
He's a 300 kilo squatter,
Yeah.
That's a big squat, and it works for him. It works for his leverages. So to say that technique is, universal, everyone's different, but I think there's so much information out there, and good information, and good coaches out there now that are accessible to people, that it's really helping to drive that.
That kind of brings up a discussion that's kind of come up over this past week too, is that a lot of athletes looking at, or people in general looking at, that someone who can have a crazy squat or crazy bench or deadlift, they think, oh yeah, I want to get that person to coach me. Just because somebody is a great athlete doesn't mean they're a good coach. But on the reverse side of that, just because someone's not a good athlete doesn't mean they're not a good coach.
Absolutely.
Right? I find for myself that I've never been a super fantastic athlete. I've always been an athlete my whole life in different sports, but I've always had to fight for the things that I've become accomplished at. So I've gained a lot of skill in that sense, but by no means in this industry, I'm not known in the powerlifting community as like, whoa, yeah, that's Carla Ramsey. She can squat 500 pounds. I'm not known for that. But same thing. Abby, he's known as a great bencher, but from the experiences I've had with him, he's been an amazing mentor to me, and I see just so many other athletes that his level of knowledge and ability to coach people, his coaching ability far exceeds what his level as an athlete has.
Absolutely.
And I think it comes down to, and I don't want to call it a problem, but it is a problem. Every lifter who hits some sort of success is now a coach, right? And I don't like it. I mean, I don't advertise. I do online coaching, but I don't advertise, right? Because I don't want people to think, oh, just another guy doing coaching, right? If people come to me, I want them to come to me because they know who I am, right?
It's really, it's so on topic right now and on trend with what's happening with powerlifting, right? I remember my first Worlds that I coached at. The first world team that I coached at was the 2012 Bench Worlds, obviously coming from a bench background. And then the very next year, I was the coach for the 2013 World Juniors. And we only had about 8 athletes on that team. But I remember going to that competition, and some of the athletes were a little bit skeptical in terms of, what my knowledge was for coaching a 3-lift event when I was coming from a bench-only background. And, athletes need to recognize and ask the right questions of their coach, rather than to understand their credibility and authority, rather than looking at their athletic ability alone or what they've done in the sport, because there's a whole multitude of factors that come into play, and in terms of creating what a good coach. And rarely, yes, I think having experience as an athlete in the sport is critical, okay, because I think that it helps with creating some sympathy and empathy for the athletes as they're going through the emotions. But certainly I don't think that the best athlete makes or creates the best coach.
I have a good example of just very good comparison. My first meet in 2008 was also Kelly Breton's first meet, and our career trajectories have been exactly the same.
All right,
entirely.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah. Exactly.
your hair and beard trajectories have been very similar.
Exactly. That's very very, very similar. No, but the exact same meet, and we've done nothing similar in our powerlifting careers. But again, like, there's things that obviously we both have qualities that lend to the sport and improve the sport. So it's one of those things where you definitely don't have to be the best athlete to be a good coach, because constantly learning as maybe an athlete that isn't as gifted, right? So
absolutely. And I think, and I say it a lot to people who are, if you want to learn how to deadlift really well, probably don't ask the best deadlifter in the world, because they're probably just naturally really good at it, and they probably don't and not to say that good deadlifters aren't good coaches, but in lots of cases, people who are just really, really good maybe have that genetic potential. Maybe they have put the time in, don't get me wrong, but lots of times they may not be the best model, right? Someone who's actually been in the trenches learning and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, it might be a better choice.
They didn't have to study as hard to
right,
get
absolutely,
it down.
yeah,
exactly. I think too the biggest mistake that athletes make when they're trying to choose a coach is that they look at what that coach has done themselves and what they've achieved themselves,
right,
rather than looking at what that coach has helped others achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you can look at that coach's athletes or clients or whatever it might be, and see what where their clients started and what that coach has helped them to achieve and help them to do, is probably a better indication of what they can help you do as well.
Right.
And just another example, going off what Ashley said here, is when you enter into a coach-athlete relationship, as a coach, you're a teacher, right? You're a teacher, and you can take the most brilliant mathematician or the brilliant, whatever. They're not necessarily going to make the most brilliant math teacher, okay, to get somebody to the level that they want to be at, okay? And as a powerlifting coach or coach in any sport, it's the exact same parallel to that. You're a teacher, and you have to have broad knowledge of whatever, math, you have to have broad knowledge of powerlifting, but it's about applying that knowledge in a context with real people and taking their needs and areas of strength and weakness, and then having, setting up a long-term plan with them and developing rapport and, building that trust. And there's a whole number of other factors that go involved with teaching, coaching, mentoring than just having a broad knowledge set.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, again, like you said, the mathematician is a good example. Someone who just understands something automatically probably can't teach it very well, right?
I think, the other part to that is because they probably won't be able to understand why you can't get it.
Right, exactly. This is how it is, right? Obviously.
Right.
You just don't get it.
Exactly. A friend of mine said, he was trying to learn guitar, and his dad is a really great guitarist. And his dad was trying to teach him, and he could not teach him because he couldn't understand why he wasn't getting it right off the bat.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing when it comes to coaching too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was a very fruitful discussion.
Interesting conversation. It
Absolutely,
went around a lot of circles, yeah.
Quick sidebar about the 2008 first meet with Kelly Brennan and I. Kelly Brennan actually cut to 110 kilos for that meet. Little fun fact. I remember the exact thing he said. We were before weigh-ins. Everyone's getting ready to weigh in. And there's someone next to him not cutting weight, and he was drinking muscle milk. And I remember the club was Golden Triangle, I think, from Kitchener or something. And Kelly looked over at his coach and said, "The guys from Golden Triangle get to drink muscle milk." And you could tell in his heart he was so upset that he had to cut weight. And obviously
now he's a super.
And that was the last day he probably ever cut weight.
And he knew he never wanted to do it again.
The guys from Golden Triangle get to drink muscle milk.
Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up this podcast here. I want to thank Mark Morris, Carla Ramsey, and Ashley Bird for joining us, talking a little bit about perspective on coaching at a world team, and obviously
extreme coaching
on an international team, and as well their thoughts on just coaching in general. I think it's very valuable to get your perspective. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
So there you have it. That was our episode this week on coaching. And we are going to release this episode on Christmas. And for the sake of the holiday season, we actually have a special giveaway this week. And if you notice my hat here, I'm wearing a hat for those of you who are joining us on YouTube. LVD Fitness is a powerlifting apparel brand that provides 1 month of clean water to a child in need for every item sold. They aim to be a brand for lifters that powerlifters can be proud of and proud to wear, and they serve to help to support the powerlifting community as it continues to grow. I absolutely love this hat, and they're giving away an LVD hat. So what you need to do is you need to go to our website, www.canadianpowerliftingpodcast.com, and click on the contest page where you can enter into one of these brand new cool LVD hats. And check out the website. We'll put a link in the description. And Steve, what do we have next week? Because we're going to release some bonus content. Normally we release an episode every other week, but we decided that on New Year's Eve we're going to release some special bonus content. What do we got?
Yeah, so next week we're going to have some bonus content from Kelly Branton. So after his performance at Commonwealth, we sat down with him and kind of talked about some of his attempts and why he made those decisions, and why he made those decisions and the end results. So stay tuned. Tune in for that episode, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
You've been listening to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best of powerlifting in Canada, hosted by Stephen Cassioli, Ryan Stinn, and myself, Abby Silverberg. Please follow us on Instagram and check out our website for some great free powerlifting content at www.canadianpowerliftingpodcast.com. If you like what you heard today, please rate our podcast on iTunes, and don't forget to listen to every other Thursday for a brand new episode.